The Daily Show. It is Monday, January 10th of 2022 at the time of this recording. It is 9:34 in the evening that I'm starting this, so you'll be hearing this on the 11th, but it is the 10th. And I just want to thank everyone again for joining me for this third episode. Eventually, I'm going to stop counting how many episodes it is, but it's still new, so it's still fun. I'm ready to bring you another article that I think is interesting, and I do like to go at different angles. Sometimes I like to go with articles that I disagree with and go at and pick apart. I like to go with articles that are neutral and I can kind of bounce myself back. And then I like to go to articles that tend to agree with my philosophy. And that's one of the ones that I'm going to be going with today. The article for today is from The Hill. It's an opinion piece, so it's not a news piece. It's an opinion piece. It's Biden's Build Back Better will raise energy prices. And it's by Jason Hayes and Isaac Orr. Now, before we go on, I want to give a little bit about the two authors, because a lot of times we always hear of environmentalists and people like that. They're always on the left. We never talk about the environmentalists that are on the right. We forget that those who are in the energy sector and dealing with energy are a lot of the times environmentalists. They have the similar degrees to those environmentalists on the left, if not the same exact ones. It's just like everything else. They have competing philosophies, and that's okay. But I just want to give you a little bit to show that the people that are in this are not rubes. It's not like they're political commentators making commentary outside of their expertise. The first guy, Jason Hayes, he's the director of environmental policy for the McKinnock Center for Public Policy. McKinnock Center is a nonpartisan research and education institute dedicated to improving the quality of life for all Michigan citizens by promoting sound solutions to state and local policy questions. Mr. Hayes holds a master in environmental design and specifically environmental science degree from the University of Calgary, bachelor's in science and natural resource conservation from the University of British Columbia, and a technical diploma in renewable resource management from Selkirk College. So this guy eats, sleeps, and breathes environmental stuff. He knows what he's talking about. He understands all the stuff that goes on in it. He might not have expertise in all the areas, but he is involved and knows. And the other gentleman, Isaac Orr, he is a policy fellow at the Center for the American Experiment, and he writes on energy and environmental issues, including mining and electricity policy. Prior to joining the Center for American Experiment, he served as a research fellow at the Heartland Institute. He specialized in energy and environmental policy. And before he was at the Heartland Institute, he served as an aide in the Wisconsin State Senate. Isaac has written extensively on hydraulic fracturing, frac sand mining, and electricity policy, among other energy and environmental issues. His writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, New York Post, The Hill, which we're going to read today, Orange County Register, Washington Times, and many other spots. Graduated, he's a graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, with studies in political science and geology. And apparently he won awards for his undergraduate geology research. So these two gentlemen are serious environmentalists, and those came from their biographical pages from the places that they do policy for and write for and things like that. So these guys are legit environmentalists. And I don't even think they would tell you that they're on the right. They would just tell you that they have differences in views from a lot of the other environmentalists that we hear making a lot of noise. And they tend to agree with those on the right more in terms of their policy. Because I think a lot of these environmentalists, I feel like they're above politics in a lot of ways, even though the ones on the left, they might be insane. But I don't think they look at themselves as clearly political. Some of them do. Some of them that enter in and know that they can gain power from it do. But I think a lot of the people that are passionate about the environment aren't necessarily looking to be political. It gets turned that way. So that's a little bit about the two guys that wrote this. Again, Biden's Build Back Better will raise energy prices, an opinion piece in The Hill. We're going to get going with this. Starting off. Attempts to justify the high cost of President Biden's Build Back Better plan have engendered a string of creative economic arguments advocating for so-called investments by the government to drive a transition to renewable energy. Quote, the stakes here are incredibly high, unquote, claimed Princeton School of Engineering professor Jesse Jenkins. Quote, Passing the Build Back Better Act would lower energy costs and secure both the United States climate's goals and its global competitiveness in some of the most important industries of the 21st century. From wind and solar power to electric vehicles, clean hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, failure would cost Americans dearly, end quote. So I'm going to stop right there. Passing the Build Back Better Act would lower energy costs and secure both the United States climate goals and its global competitiveness. Who in the United States climate goals? This is where it gets insane when it comes to the climate change and all that arguments and renewable energies. The people that are in favor of climate change and firmly believe in man-made climate change and that we need to do things or we're going to die by this year. And when we get to that year, no, not in this year, the next few years, they keep on moving that goalpost back because they've been wrong every single time. But they speak for everybody. They try to. And this guy is just an engineering professor over at Princeton, ever at the University of Princeton. It's not like he's a true policymaker. It's not like he's somebody that has a mandate like, President Biden. You might not like the guy, but he is the president. If he wants to make a environmental mandate, then he can. And that's part of his thing, whether you agree with it or not, whether Congress fights back against it, that's his prerogative. It's their prerogative. But this guy's just a professor, and he's saying that doing this will, the United States climate goals. By whose standard? Not by almost, I want to say almost half the country doesn't think that man-made climate change is a huge deal. Maybe that's a little more, but I want to say there's a good amount of people there that just say, no, it's not the biggest deal, and it's not going to cost Americans dearly. So I continue with the article. The claim again, in brief, BBB, Build Back Better, would lower energy costs. Failing to pass the bill will, quote, cost Americans dearly, end quote. Of course, this claim was quickly critiqued, elicited a multi-layer Twitter thread that backtracked on the idea that the bill would lower energy costs. The updated contention explained that it would only lower costs for American households and businesses. Those were in quotes. But the revised claim requires the reader to believe in government legrace as the essential driver of economic well-being. In keeping with that theme, several arguments throughout the thread promoted government investments, quote unquote, in hydrogen, carbon capture, battery storage, and electric vehicle manufacturing, as well as massive increases in already generous federal subsidies for wind and solar development. The government spending argument was then capped off with the cliche threat that without this multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, the United States will further cede leadership in a fast-growing clean energy industries to China, Europe, and others, end quote. So one thing I need to point out here, they talk about the money that's being spent here and how much the bill costs. And the first episode of the Alex Cuesta Show with my brother David, we did a whole entire breakdown of the Build Back Better bill. And one thing that we talked about is the money does not matter to them. They don't care about how much you spent. And I know there'll be people on the left going, well, Trump spent this much. And I agree. Trump spent way too much. And the quote unquote conservatives in Congress let him spend way too much. The COVID stuff is what it is. They had to spend money to get it under wraps, and they're trying to get it in control there. But before that, there was a lot of money spent in a lot of places. So I agree with the left on times when they go after Trump for his spending and the Republican Congress. Yeah, it needs to be on the wraps. But what we need to understand is those on the left, they believe in modern monetary theory. If you want to know more about that, I recommend reading a book, The Deficit Myth, by Stephanie Kelton. Stephanie Kelton is one of the lead economists for the left. She was Bernie Sanders' economist and for, I believe, when he ran his campaign. And also she was an economist, the lead economist for the Democrat Party during the Obama years. So she's been in the ear of top Democrats for a long time. And the essential bottom line with modern monetary theory is governments that issue money cannot be in debt. The deficit isn't real. That since they are a currency issuer, since they print the money, they can never run out of the money because they could just print more. That's the general crux of the theory. We need more money, we print more. And if it's put to the right places, then it won't end up being a deficit because the money will just get recirculated and people will thrive from it. That is essentially the theory. So when you hear them talking about investments in hydrogen, carbon capture, battery storage, electric vehicle, more subsidies for wind and solar, and people are looking at it going, how much more can we spend? Realize that those on the left go, we can spend whatever the hell we want. And it does not matter. It's just something where you need to understand where it comes from. I recommend reading that book. She's one of the leading minds. That's a person that I think it might hurt some people to listen to it, but it is interesting. I'll give it that. I walked away from that. It is interesting. I have a different understanding for it. I just still have a lot of questions. And if I ever had the chance to talk to Miss Kelton, I would love to ask her some questions and have her really explain it to me. It's not a difficult theory to understand. It's pretty simple, but there are nuances in it that you need to read and you need to really hash out in order to get them. So we're going to continue with the article. When pushed on the issue, Jenkins backtracked again, arguing that BBB would, quote, lower total expenditures on energy costs by households and businesses, end quote. But he acknowledged that those lower costs were possible only because, quote, costs are shifted, in parentheses, via tax credits, rebates, and grants, end parentheses, to the federal tax base, which is much more progressive, end quote. The clarification is a little more than an equivocation or a creative accounting trick. So right there, once you start questioning these individuals on essentially what this means and really start delving into it and why they say what they say, either they get pissed and they start telling you, well, you don't care about this, you don't understand this, you know, it's too complicated, or they start doing this and they backtrack. They never really have a true answer to back up what they say. So right there, it's not going to lower energy costs. It's just going to be moved around. The money's going to be moved. So you're still going to see the same, if not more, in your pocket being taken out. Maybe not just from that exact line that you were taking it out from directly, but it's going to come out anyway. So next, starting with the next paragraph. First, the BBB plan is not, as Jenkins claims, based on progressivity. A key provision of the BBB plan would dramatically increase the state and local tax deduction. The SALT deduction tends to favor wealthy blue state residents and 6 middle-class taxpayers in lower tax red states with the bill. All right, now a little aside, I'm not going to lie. This part gets into a lot of that type of stuff. I'm not a big fan of the Marxist ideology of pitting money versus not money, economic classes against each other. I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm just not a fan of it, throwing that out there. Continuing. Additionally, BBB expands generous subsidies for wind and solar energy and electric vehicles that largely benefit wealthy coastal elites. According to University of Chicago research, most of the $18 billion in federal income tax credits spent to date on weatherization of U.S. households, residential solar, and electric cars has been spent this way. In short, BBB uses a shifting foundation for energy policy, political patronage, and transfers of wealth from lower and middle income taxpayers in red states to upper, middle class, and wealthy blue state residents. This approach is anything but progressive and likely will be reversed after the next election. Again, using kind of a little class warfare there. Not a huge fan of it. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to point out the hypocrisies, but you can't talk about hypocrisies with people that don't care. That's what everyone needs to realize that's on the right trying to fight this. Those on the left that firmly believe in climate change, that believe that we need to do this stuff, do not care how the money's being spent, where a lot of it's going to. They just think they're doing their part. And the reason why a lot of this gets repatriated back to the wealthy blue state coastal elites is because they're the ones that have time to worry about it. They don't, like, they're the ones that are making the policy, and they're the ones that push a lot of this. A lot of your suburban people that are in the upper middle class are the ones that are buying the Teslas and starting to throw solar panels on their houses and really doing their part. And in the end, they're the ones that are getting beat up as well, but they feel like they're doing better. And those in the rural and lower class can't be bothered with any of this. Not only can they not afford it, they're just trying to survive. So I don't like the class warfare thing, but I understand where it's coming from. Continuing. Second, Jenkins' argument ignores the growing reliability costs associated with mandating a transition away from reliable, affordable sources of energy, such as fossil fuels and nuclear, to weather-dependent sources. instabilities inherent in the variable nature of wind and solar, as well as ongoing generous federal subsidies for them, impose a host of costs on the wider electric grid. For example, green subsidies allow electricity producers to use renewable sources to sell their electricity for less than the cost of producing it, while also ignoring the costs associated with their unreliable nature. These subsidies destabilize the economics of reliable energy sources, making electricity production less secure. And when blackouts occur, they will hit rural working class residents and lower income inner city residents the hardest. That is very true with the blackouts. One thing they don't mention is, number one, I forget where I saw this from, but the giant plots of land that they either have to clear trees out to do or have to take over farmland in order to put their wind farms and solar farms on. That's number one. You're taking up an insane amount of land where a factory is much less land that you're taking up in order to do this. And the second thing that they don't mention is how many fossil fuels are being used to make these things. Because these things get made in factories. They get made in factories. And it's a lot of fossil fuels going into them. The metals and plastics used, a lot of petroleum is in that. That's all petroleum. And that's the thing that mind boggles me. And no one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that we're going to continue to use fossil fuels to create these green, quote unquote, renewables. The non-reliability of it is very true. The weather dependent sources, the fact that we saw in Texas, if the winterization wasn't done properly or if it failed, these windmills would stop. I think Sweden or Germany had a ton of wind farms, and they're the ones that just struck the deal with Russia to start getting cheap oil back in because they need fossil fuels because they failed so terribly. So this is a nice way of saying that this shit doesn't work yet. It's not ready. And it's still going to use a ton of fossil fuels to do. And when it comes to electric, McFly, you're still going to need a ton of coal to do it. So that's the big secret that no one talks about here. The fact that you're bulldozing a ton of land to make these things that don't produce as much energy as the cheaper renewable fossil fuels. And also fossil fuels are renewable. We need to stop saying that they're not renewable. They come from dying plants. Plants die all the time. So the fact that people say, oh, we're going to run out of fossil fuels, that's bullshit. Tell them to their face that's bullshit. And they don't know what they're talking about. It's plants dying, which is why all the time we think we're running out of a reservoir. Oh my God, we just found another 200 million gallons here, whatever it is here. And it's going to sustain us for another so many years. That's why it happens, because it is forever going on. I'm going to continue. Our health and well-being, as our national economic competitives, rely on the properly functioning and reliable electric grid. Given this, it's clear that subsidizing unreliable energy sources fundamentally undercuts the nation's ability to operate. This reality was made painfully clear during the February 2021 blackouts that shut down Texas and now routinely black out California during the summer. All you need to look at is California. They are the experiment, and they are in a state of constant rolling blackouts that are man-made. They're telling them, we're blacking out because, the dam isn't working. We're a little bit too low because of this drought. So we couldn't do that. The windmills aren't producing enough, or so many bevies of reasons why they're blacking out. That's the experiment. They're the most liberal place in the country. Maybe next to Oregon and Washington. They're pretty bad too. But that's a big experiment there. And it's a failure. It is a failure what goes on in California. Absolute failure. So that's a big example and something we can see in our future if we continue to go this way. Continuing. Third, Jenkins admitted BBB won't lower energy costs. It will simply transfer rising energy costs from one line item in a budget to another. But as we've noted above, special tax favors for wealthy elites means these policies hit lower and middle income taxpayers the hardest. It's revealing that most effective advocates for the green energy aspects of Biden's Build Back Better plan have to start out with a broad but ultimately unsupportable claim that it will lower energy costs. Digging into the plan just a little deeper reveals that it will not achieve that goal, and it certainly does not comport with the progressive notions about economics. While it's currently stalled, the BBB will, if passed, enrich a select portion of the well-to-do green political set, and it will do so at the expense of everyone it was supposed to help. And that's the end of the piece. So just piggybacking off the end of that, though, they always, I say all the time, The left only has hyperbole. That is how they live. They create crisis if it's not there. They speak it into existence. And everything they say is hyperbole. We've seen it over and over and over again. There's always some dire thing that we're going to die from if we don't do. Climate change has been on the radar for a long time. They've had different names for it. They had global cooling in the 70s, which, they tried to laugh off a while ago. Oh, that was just, that was a joke. It wasn't serious, when it's pretty damn serious if you look up things about global cooling. They were as crazy about it now as they are about global warming. And then they said, switch to global warming. Al Gore with his The Inconvenient Truth, switch to global warming. When they couldn't completely prove that the warming of the planet was having an ill effect, they just went to climate change. Because who's going to dispute that the climate is changing? It's always changing. And when they say that, this is the science of it, the science is settled, they're wrong. Because anyone that says science is settled is a moron and doesn't believe in science. Science is always there to be contested. And just because you believe in a certain science, and an overwhelming majority of scientists believe in it right now, doesn't mean it's right. There was an overwhelming majority of scientists that believed the earth was flat at one point, that believed we were the center of the universe, that believed that, so many different things until they are disproven. So this is the conventional wisdom, because it's being spoken in the conventional wisdom that climate change is having such a massive effect. And we see it. We see it. Any big weather event, climate change caused this. It can't just be a bad hurricane anymore. It can't just be a shitty tornado. It can't just be, an earthquake. It's always climate change. And when they're always claiming it, then something's fishy about it. So in the end, I agree with a lot of the premises of this article. I don't like the use of economic classes against each other. To me, that's a little Marxist, but I understand why they did it. They're painting the people that are pushing this as hypocrites. But what everyone needs to understand is the people that are pushing this, especially the big politicians and stuff like that, they don't care. They just don't care about you at all. They're there to push their agenda. Some of them firmly believe in climate change, and this is the only way. I read a book by Klaus Schwab. He's the president of the World Economic Forum. They're a bunch of yahoos at the World Economic Forum, but they are the ones that started Build Back Better. That came from the World Economic Forum. It is not a Joe Biden original. He's taking his cues from this place. And this guy talks about the fourth industrial revolution. Part of that fourth industrial revolution is exactly what they're trying to do in this article, what they're saying they're trying to do with all the moves to renewables. And a lot of things have to do with the climate. And a lot of things have to do with geoengineering. It's scary shit. I recommend people go look up Klaus Schwab, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I believe it's a long title about strategies of getting into the Fourth Industrial Revolution. 2 different books. They both talk about this type of stuff in their goals. So just remind you, Build Back Better is not a Biden original. It's World Economic Forum stuff. Klaus Schwab is a madman. But kind of getting off topic here. Overall, the article, I agree with it. Build Back Better is a sham. They were telling us it cost $0, and then they had to back out when so many places came out and was like, no, $0 is impossible. But then when you realize that they believe in modern monetary theory, it does cost $0 to them because they don't care. They believe this money is going into the right place. So if it's going into the right place, it's going to eventually recirculate and Uncle Sam will never lose. That is their theory. So overall, Build Back Better is stalled. Build Back Better needs to be killed. And I'm hoping they can't push anything through before the elections come up, because exactly what we need is enough conservatives to be voted in, not Republicans, because Republicans have no spine. We see Mitch McConnell giving concessions all the time, but enough conservatives to come in to really stand up against this and say, no, this is a bad bill. We don't want this globalist bullshit, and stop telling lies. It's not true what you're saying. All this energy stuff doesn't work that they're saying. If they're not serious about nuclear, then they're not serious about environmental stuff. That's it. It's the cleanest and the best energy we have. So with that, I'm going to close this out because I can go on a rant for a lot longer about this and get into truly conspiratorial stuff, but I'm not going to do that. I appreciate everyone for listening. I will be back tomorrow. This right now is a 7-day thing. I don't know if I'm going to eventually just go to 5, but right now it's 7 because there's a lot of interesting stuff always going on. So it's easy to find stuff. But I appreciate you listening to the Alex Cuesta Daily Show. Socials, go search the Alex Cuesta Show on anywhere you can, on your social medias. I'm basically everywhere. Not going to give you any tags because I don't want to. And I will see everyone tomorrow. Look out for, we record on Wednesday, David and I, for the Alex Cuesta Show. That'll be out Thursday. So continue to look out for that. Got another good episode of that for you. So again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to everybody tomorrow.